Nobody could explain why the most dangerous police dog in Texas suddenly became calm around one little girl, until they discovered the heartbreaking truth that changed everything. The dust hung thick in the afternoon air at Lone Star Animal Ranch, settling like a warning over the wooden fences and training pens. Men stood frozen against the railings, their knuckles white as they gripped the weathered wood. Their eyes were locked on the massive German shepherd prowling inside the isolation enclosure, his claws scraping against the hard-packed earth with each deliberate step. His name was Rex, once spoken with pride throughout the K-9 unit, now whispered with fear across the ranch. He wasn't just any dog. He was the most infamous police canine the department had ever trained. An animal who had passed every test, conquered every obstacle, mastered every command until one mission shattered everything. The transformation had been swift and brutal. Discipline became unpredictability. Loyalty twisted into explosive aggression. 3 trainers had failed to control him. 2 officers bore his bite scars. 1 handler nearly died. After that, the department made their painful decision. Rex was unfit for duty, but putting down a decorated K-9 sparked heated debates, angry emails, and sleepless nights. The compromise was this ranch, miles from civilization, where impossible cases received their final shot at redemption. Rex moved with caged energy, his breath sharp and visible in the Texas heat. Every sudden noise made him snap around violently. Every shadow triggered a low, menacing growl. Every human voice sent him retreating to the far corner of his pen, ears flattened, teeth bared. "Stay back," warned Jake Morrison, the ranch owner, as Rex suddenly charged the fence with a thunderous bark that made every man step backward. Jake's weathered hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his hat. In 30 years of working with the wildest animals Texas had to offer, he'd never encountered anything like Rex. The animal had broken through steel kennels. He'd hospitalized grown men. He'd shattered every record in all the worst ways. Nobody could touch him. Nobody could calm him. Nobody could tame him. But today, something impossible was about to happen. The dusty pickup truck rumbled through the ranch gates just as the afternoon sun reached its peak. The ranch hands barely glanced up from their work. New employees came and went regularly. But when the truck door opened and a little girl with blonde pigtails hopped out, every conversation stopped. Emma Cooper, 6 years old, adjusted her small backpack and surveyed the ranch with the curious eyes of someone entering a playground, not a rehabilitation center where dangerous animals lived. Her tiny boots kicked up small clouds of dust as she walked beside her father, completely unafraid of the sounds echoing across the property. Behind her stepped Ethan Cooper, 35 years old, recently divorced, and desperately needing this maintenance job to support his daughter. He placed a protective hand on Emma's shoulder, his jaw tight with worry. Finding reliable childcare in rural Texas had proven impossible, leaving him no choice but to bring Emma to work until he could afford other arrangements. "Stay close, sweetheart," he murmured, scanning the various animal enclosures. "Some of these animals are unpredictable," but Emma wasn't listening. Her bright blue eyes had found Rex's isolation pen across the yard, where the German shepherd continued his restless patrolling. Something in his movement, in the way he held his head, in the deep sadness she somehow sensed, drew her like a magnet. Jake Morrison emerged from the main office, extending a calloused hand to Ethan. "Welcome aboard, Cooper. Didn't expect you to bring family." Ethan's shoulders tensed. "Couldn't arrange childcare today. She won't be any trouble. I'll keep her away from the dangerous areas." "Dangerous areas?" Emma piped up, still staring at Rex. "Why is the doggy in the cage?" Jake followed her gaze and his expression darkened. "That's Rex. He's sick, sweetheart. Very sick. You must never ever go near that pen. Promise me." But Emma didn't promise. She tilted her head, studying Rex with the intense focus only children possess. The K9 had noticed her too. His restless movement faltered. His ears pricked forward. For the first time since arriving at the ranch, he stood completely still, staring back at the small girl with something that looked almost like recognition. The ranch hands noticed immediately. Conversations died. Tools were set down. Everyone turned to witness something that shouldn't be possible. Rex never stopped for anything. Not for food, not for commands, not for the trainers who'd spent months trying to reach him. But here he stood, frozen, watching a 6-year-old girl with an intensity that sent chills down every spine. "Daddy," Emma whispered. The doggy looked sad. Before anyone could react, she took a step toward Rex's pen. Then another. Ethan lunged forward, panic flooding his voice. "Emma, no!" But she was already walking, her small feet carrying her steadily across the dusty ground, while every adult watched in horror. Rex remained motionless, his amber eyes never leaving her face. The closer she came, the calmer he became. His tail, which had been rigid with tension, slowly lowered. His ears relaxed. 20 feet, 15, 10. "Someone stop her!" Jake shouted, but his own feet seemed rooted to the spot. Emma reached the fence and pressed both tiny hands against the metal bars. Rex approached slowly, cautiously, his massive head tilting as if trying to understand something profound. When his nose touched the barrier just inches from her fingers, Emma giggled. A sound so pure and innocent it seemed to lift the very air. "Hi, doggy," she whispered. Rex exhaled softly, his breath warm against her small hands. No growl, no snarl, no rage, just a broken animal finding the first moment of peace he'd known in 2 years. Every man at the ranch stared in absolute silence, witnessing something that defied everything they thought they knew about Rex, about trauma, about healing. Emma was 6 years old, blonde, fearless, and somehow, inexplicably, she had just tamed the beast nobody could touch. The evening air carried the scent of hay and approaching rain as Ethan secured Emma in the ranch's break room for the night. They couldn't afford an apartment yet, and Jake had generously allowed them to stay on site until Ethan's first paycheck came through. Emma's sleeping bag was spread on a cot beside Ethan's desk, and she clutched her stuffed rabbit while asking endless questions about her new environment. "Tell me about the sad doggy again," Emma whispered. Ethan sighed, smoothing her hair. "Rex isn't sad, sweetheart. He's dangerous. That's why he has to stay locked up." "But I made him happy," Emma insisted. "I saw it in his eyes." "Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard decisions to keep everyone safe," Ethan said carefully. "Promise me you won't go near his pen again without asking first." Emma's silence was answer enough. Over the following week, Ethan established a strict routine designed to keep Emma occupied and away from Rex. She helped with feeding the gentler animals, organized supplies in the storage shed, and spent her afternoons in the air-conditioned office doing coloring books while Ethan worked nearby. But despite his vigilance, Emma found ways to visit Rex during brief moments when Ethan was distracted. Loading equipment, talking with Jake, or making necessary trips to the bathroom. Each secret visit deepened the mysterious bond. Rex would move to the fence line the moment he sensed her approach. Emma would talk to him in the serious way children reserve for important conversations, discussing everything from her favorite colors to her worries about starting school. Rex listened with the focused attention of someone understanding every word. The breakthrough came during Emma's 7th unauthorized visit. Jake discovered them together, Emma sitting cross-legged in the dirt, Rex lying beside the fence with his massive head pressed against the bars near her shoulder. Both were completely calm, completely content, completely absorbed in each other's presence. "Well, I'll be damned," Jake muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But their peaceful bubble was about to burst. That morning brought unwelcome news in the form of official letters that would change everything. Jake gathered the ranch hands around the main office, his weathered face grim as he spread insurance papers across a wooden table. "Gentlemen, we have a problem," Jake announced. "Our insurance rates have tripled. The company is citing multiple incidents involving aggressive animals as the reason." Caleb Torres, a quiet ranch hand in his mid-40s with prematurely gray hair, shifted uncomfortably. "What kind of incidents?" "Rex," Jake said simply. "Two handler injuries, one hospitalization, thousands in medical bills. The insurance company is demanding we euthanize him within 30 days, or they'll drop our coverage entirely." The implications hit everyone immediately. Without insurance, the ranch couldn't operate. 30 families would lose their jobs. Hundreds of animals would have nowhere to go. Everything they'd built would disappear. Ethan felt his stomach drop. He just started this job. Emma was finally settling into a routine. If the ranch closed, they'd be back to sleeping in their truck and searching for work that probably didn't exist. "There has to be another way," Caleb said, his voice tight with emotion none of them had heard before. "Not unless Rex can prove he's rehabilitated," Jake replied, "and we all know that's impossible." But across the yard, invisible to the men discussing his fate, Rex was experiencing something extraordinary. Emma had convinced Jake to let her help with evening feeding, and she moved between the animal pens with a bucket nearly as big as she was, chattering constantly to any creature that would listen. When she passed Rex's enclosure, he rose and followed her along the fence line, his movement no longer frantic or aggressive, but patient and protective. "He's watching her like a guardian," one of the younger ranch hands observed. "More like a prisoner watching freedom," another replied sadly. What none of them understood yet was that Emma represented something Rex had been searching for since his world fell apart. Not forgiveness from humans, not acceptance from the system that had discarded him, but connection with pure innocence. The kind of trust he'd been trained to protect and had somehow lost the ability to inspire. Time was running out. 29 days until his execution. 29 days to prove that redemption was possible. 29 days to heal a wound that had been bleeding for far too long. The revelation came on a rain-soaked Thursday morning when Caleb Torres finally broke his silence. He'd been watching Emma and Rex's daily interactions for 2 weeks, seeing something in the dog's behavior that haunted his sleep and followed him through his days. After witnessing Emma somehow convince Rex to respond to basic commands, something no professional trainer had achieved in 2 years, Caleb couldn't remain quiet anymore. He found Ethan repairing fence posts behind the equipment barn, methodically hammering new boards into place with the focused intensity of a man trying to outwork his worries. The morning air was thick with humidity, promising another afternoon thunderstorm. "We need to talk about Rex," Caleb said without preamble. Ethan looked up, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "What about him? I knew him before." The words hung heavy between them. "I was there the night everything went wrong." Ethan set down his hammer, giving Caleb his full attention. In the 2 weeks he'd worked at the ranch, the older man had spoken fewer than 50 words total. Now his face carried the weight of someone who'd been carrying a terrible secret. "I was a Dallas police officer for 15 years, Caleb continued, his voice steady but strained. "Officer Martinez was my partner on the K-9 unit. Rex was the best dog we'd ever seen. Smart, loyal, brave beyond measure. He saved dozens of lives over 4 years of service." "What happened?" Ethan asked quietly, already dreading the answer. Caleb closed his eyes and suddenly he was back there. Back to that night 2 years ago when everything changed forever. Downtown Dallas, hostage situation in an abandoned warehouse. Armed suspect had grabbed a 6-year-old girl during a convenience store robbery, Sophia Chen, a tourist from California. The perpetrator was high on methamphetamines, desperate and cornered. Negotiations had been going on for hours with no progress. The rain began falling, drumming against the barn roof like the soundtrack to a memory Caleb wished he could forget. Rex and Martinez went in first. I was back up, positioned at the perimeter with two other units. The takedown was textbook perfect. Rex disabled the suspect without killing him. Martinez secured the weapon, and the little girl was physically unharmed. That sounds like a success story, Ethan said carefully. It was. Until the aftermath, Caleb's voice cracked. Sophia was traumatized, 6 years old, covered in dust and fear, and when she saw Rex approaching to check on her, when she saw this massive German shepherd with the suspect's blood on his muzzle from the takedown, she screamed. Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. She screamed and screamed and screamed. Wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. Rex tried to approach her, tried to comfort her the way he'd been trained to comfort victims, but she just screamed louder. Get the dog away! Get the dog away! Over and over until the paramedics sedated her. Jesus, Ethan whispered. Rex broke that night, Caleb continued, his eyes distant with painful memory. Not physically, psychologically. He'd spent his entire career protecting children, and suddenly a child was terrified of him. He couldn't process it, started associating children's cries with failure, with being a monster instead of a hero. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. That's why he's been so aggressive. Every time Rex heard a child cry after that, every time he saw fear in young eyes, he was back in that warehouse, convinced he was the threat, not the protector. The department tried everything: retraining, medication, behavioral therapy with the best specialists money could buy. Nothing worked. Martinez fought for him for 8 months, but eventually they gave up. Eventually, they decided he was too broken to fix. Caleb looked toward Rex's pen, where the dog sat motionless, staring across the ranch with the patient stillness of someone waiting for something important. But Emma isn't afraid of him. She should be, Ethan said, though his conviction wavered. Should she? Caleb challenged gently. That dog hasn't shown an ounce of aggression toward your daughter. With her, he's gentle, protective, the way he used to be with everyone. Ethan followed Caleb's gaze. In the distance, Emma had somehow convinced Jake to let her help with the afternoon feeding routine. She moved between the animal pens with a bucket nearly as big as she was, chattering constantly to any creature that would listen. When she passed Rex's enclosure, he rose and followed her along the fence line until she disappeared from view, his movement patient and protective. She's healing him, Caleb said softly, just by not being afraid. Just by seeing the hero instead of the beast. The insurance company doesn't care about healing, Ethan replied, though his tone had lost its edge. They care about liability. Rex has 18 days before... He couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Then we better hope Emma can work miracles, Caleb said, because that dog deserves a second chance. And frankly, so do the rest of us. As if summoned by their conversation, Emma appeared around the corner of the barn, her face bright with 6-year-old excitement and completely oblivious to the rain beginning to fall. Daddy, guess what? Rex learned to shake hands. Well, shake paws. Mr. Jake says he's never seen anything like it. Ethan looked at his daughter, this tiny girl who somehow saw light in the darkest places, and wondered if miracles were actually possible, or if hoping for one would just make the inevitable heartbreak that much worse. Either way, they were about to find out. The state evaluators arrived on a gray Tuesday morning, their official vehicles cutting through the ranch dust like harbingers of judgment. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead animal behaviorist, emerged from the passenger seat with a clipboard thick enough to contain a death sentence. Behind her came 2 assistants and enough equipment to conduct the most thorough psychological evaluation a dog had ever received. Jake Morrison met them at the main gate, his hands trembling slightly as he shook Dr. Chen's hand. 24 years of running the ranch had taught him to read people quickly, and he didn't like what he saw in the evaluator's professional detachment. "Thank you for coming," Jake said. "I know this is unusual." "Mr. Morrison," Dr. Chen replied in a voice that had delivered 1,000 diagnoses, most of them terminal. "We're here because the insurance company needs definitive proof that this animal poses no threat to public safety. Our evaluation will be comprehensive." Ethan watched from across the yard, Emma's small hand clutched tightly in his. She'd been unusually quiet all morning, as if sensing the gravity of what was about to happen. Jake had arranged for her to spend the evaluation in the main office, safely away from whatever might unfold. "Why are there so many people here?" Emma whispered, pressing closer to her father's leg. "They're here to test Rex," Ethan said carefully, "to see if he's better." "He is better. I made him better." If only it were that simple, Ethan thought, his chest tight with dread. The evaluation began with standard protocols designed to assess Rex's behavioral stability. He was transferred from his isolation pen to the main training arena, a large enclosed space with observation platforms on all sides. Dr. Chen and her team positioned themselves behind reinforced barriers, while Jake entered the arena with a lead rope and 28 years of experience that suddenly felt inadequate. "Rex, sit," Jake commanded in his most authoritative voice. Rex ignored him completely, stalking the perimeter of the arena with the restless energy of a caged predator. His ears were flat against his head, his tail rigid, every muscle in his body coiled with tension. The presence of strangers had triggered every defensive instinct he'd developed over the past 2 years. "Rex, down!" Nothing. If anything, Rex's agitation increased. He began panting heavily, his amber eyes darting between the observers as if cataloging threats. Foam appeared at the corners of his mouth, a stress response that made Dr. Chen's assistants take an involuntary step backward. "Failure to respond to basic commands," Dr. Chen murmured into her recording device. "High stress indicators, excessive salivation, classic signs of—" "Wait," Emma said, her voice cutting through the clinical observations like a silver bell. "Emma, no!" Ethan lunged for her, but she was already running toward the arena entrance, her small legs carrying her faster than anyone anticipated. "Stop that child!" Dr. Chen shouted, her professional calm cracking. "The animal is in an agitated state." But Emma had already slipped through the gate and into the arena. Every adult froze, watching in horror as she walked calmly toward the agitated German shepherd, who had just failed every test designed to save his life. Rex's transformation was instantaneous and complete. The moment Emma entered his space, his entire demeanor changed. The stalking stopped. The panting ceased. His ears lifted, his tail softened, and he approached her with the gentle caution of someone greeting a beloved friend after a long absence. "Hi, Rex," Emma said simply, as if nothing unusual was happening. "These people want to see how good you are. Can you show them?" What happened next would be discussed in veterinary behavioral journals for years to come. Rex, who had ignored every command from every trainer, sat immediately at Emma's quiet request. When she held up her hand, he stayed perfectly still. When she walked away, he followed exactly 3 steps behind, close enough to protect, far enough to give her space. "Shake," Emma said, extending her tiny hand. Rex lifted his massive paw and placed it gently in her palm, his movement so controlled and precise it looked rehearsed. Dr. Chen's clipboard slipped from nerveless fingers. That's medically impossible. The behavioral transformation is unprecedented." "Emma," Ethan called, his voice breaking with a mixture of pride and terror. "Come back now." But Emma wasn't finished. She wrapped her arms around Rex's neck in a hug that should have triggered every aggressive instinct he'd developed over the past 2 years. Instead, Rex stood perfectly still, his eyes closing with what could only be described as contentment. "See?" Emma told the shocked adults. "He's not broken. He was just lonely." Dr. Chen retrieved her clipboard with shaking hands, scribbling notes frantically. I need to document this. The subject shows complete behavioral modification in the presence of the specific individual. But even as she spoke, Emma was walking back toward the gate, and Rex was returning to his agitated state. Without her calming presence, the stress indicators returned immediately. The stalking resumed. The foam reappeared. The animal shows severe dependency on a specific individual. Dr. Chen announced, her professional detachment intact despite what she'd witnessed. This creates an unacceptable risk factor for general public interaction. If anything happened to the child, she didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the implications. Rex was still scheduled for euthanization in 11 days. The miracle Emma had performed wasn't enough to save him by official standards. But sometimes when hope is nearly dead, the universe provides exactly what's needed. The storm was coming. The weather alert crackled through the radio at 3:47 a.m., jolting Jake Morrison from restless sleep with its urgent tone. Severe thunderstorm warning, possible tornadoes, damaging winds exceeding 60 miles per hour. Flash flooding likely. By dawn, the sky had transformed into a bruised canvas of purple and black, heavy with the promise of violence. The animals sensed it first, cattle lowing nervously in the distance, horses pacing restlessly in their stalls, every creature on the ranch feeling the electric tension that preceded nature's fury. Ethan worked frantically to secure loose equipment while Emma helped Jake move the smaller animals to the reinforced main barn. Rex remained in his isolation pen, his behavior growing increasingly agitated as the barometric pressure dropped. His pacing had taken on a new urgency, as if he sensed something beyond just the approaching weather. 10 days left until his scheduled execution. The first raindrops arrived like advanced scouts, fat and warm and striking the dust with small explosions of earth. Within minutes, the scouts became soldiers, then battalions, then an all-out assault that transformed the ranch roads into rushing rivers and the carefully maintained grounds into a muddy battlefield. "Everyone to the main barn!" Jake shouted over the increasing wind, his voice barely audible above the growing roar. "Move the cattle to the upper pasture. Secure everything that can blow away." The ranch hands scattered to their emergency tasks, each man focused on protecting animals and property from the approaching tempest. In the organized chaos of storm preparation, no one noticed Emma slip away from the group. No one saw her small figure darting between buildings, heading toward Rex's pen with the determined purpose only children possess. Rex saw her coming through the driving rain long before anyone else could have. Despite the thunder rolling overhead, a sound that usually sent him into frantic anxiety, he moved to the fence line and waited. Emma's yellow raincoat was already soaked through, her blonde hair plastered to her head, but she showed no fear of the storm raging around them. "I had to come," she told him, pressing her face against the fence bars. "You look so scared this morning." Rex pushed his muzzle through the bars, seeking the comfort of her touch. Emma reached through to stroke his wet fur, both of them finding peace in each other despite the chaos of wind and rain. That's when they heard it, a sharp crack of splintering wood, followed by the thunderous bellowing of panicked cattle. The storm had weakened a section of fencing in the upper pasture, and 12 head of cattle, each weighing over 1,000 pounds, had broken through and were charging toward the main ranch complex. Emma turned at the sound, her 6-year-old mind not immediately recognizing the danger. Rex understood instantly. His ears shot forward, his body tensed, every protective instinct screaming warnings as he watched the massive animals bearing down on the small girl who had become his entire world. Without hesitation, Rex threw his full weight against the gate of his pen. The lock, weakened by months of his previous escape attempts, and the constant moisture, finally gave way with a metallic shriek that cut through the storm. He burst free just as the lead bull rounded the corner of the equipment shed, its eyes wild with storm-induced panic. Emma froze, finally understanding the danger. 1,200 pounds of terrified beef was charging directly at her, and she was too small to run fast enough, too frightened to move at all. Rex launched himself forward like a guided missile. For 2 years, his strength had been seen as a threat, his size as a danger, his intensity as a warning. Now, all of that power focused on a single purpose: protecting the child who had seen his heart when everyone else saw only his scars. He intercepted the lead bull just 8 feet from Emma, his body slamming into the animal's massive shoulder with enough force to knock it sideways. The bull stumbled, confused and disoriented, its charge disrupted. Rex positioned himself squarely between the herd and Emma, teeth bared not in aggression, but in protection, standing his ground against animals 4 times his weight. The other cattle, following their leader's confusion, bunched up uncertainly. Rex held his position, growling with a ferocity that had nothing to do with rage and everything to do with love. He was a warrior defending his castle, a knight protecting his princess, a dog doing what dogs had done for thousands of years, choosing his human above his own safety. Ethan arrived running, splashing through puddles and shouting Emma's name over the storm. He saw his daughter pressed against the fence, saw Rex standing guard against a dozen massive animals, saw clearly for the first time what Caleb had been trying to tell him. Rex wasn't a monster. He was a hero who had lost his way and found it again in the love of a fearless child. Jake and the other ranch hands arrived with ropes and cattle prods, working quickly to herd the confused animals back toward the secure barn. But Rex never moved from his protective position until the last bull was safely contained. Only then did he turn to Emma, his tail wagging for the first time since arriving at the ranch. Emma threw her arms around his soaked neck, and Rex finally allowed himself to be what he'd always been meant to be. Not a weapon, not a threat, not a beast to be feared, just a very good dog who loved his girl more than life itself. The video changed everything. Jake Morrison had installed security cameras around the ranch 6 months earlier, mainly to monitor valuable equipment and ensure animal safety. He'd never bothered to check the footage regularly until Caleb suggested they review the recordings from the storm, primarily to assess property damage for insurance claims. What they found instead was 47 seconds of footage that would spread across the internet and transform Rex from local problem into national hero. The camera angle captured everything: Emma standing frozen as the cattle charged, Rex bursting from his pen with explosive force, the collision that saved her life, and his protective stance that proved beyond doubt what kind of animal he really was. The audio picked up Emma's frightened cry and then Rex's answering roar of defiance as he faced down threats 4 times his size. Jake uploaded the video to the ranch's modest Facebook page on Thursday afternoon, mainly to show local supporters that their donations were making a difference. By Friday morning, it had been shared 800 times. By weekend, it had reached 50,000 views. By Monday, major news outlets were calling. Good Morning America called on Tuesday. The Today Show on Wednesday. By Friday, Jake's ancient landline was ringing constantly with requests from news outlets, documentary filmmakers, and book publishers eager to tell Rex's story. But the call that mattered most came on Sunday morning while Emma was reading to Rex under their favorite oak tree. "Is this Lone Star Ranch?" The voice was young, female, nervous. "Speaking," Jake replied, expecting another media request. "My name is Sophia Chen. I think you have my dog." Jake's breath caught. He looked across the yard to where Rex lay in the shade. Emma curled against his side as she worked through a picture book. "Can you hold on just a moment?" He found Caleb repairing fence posts near the main barn, his movements more purposeful than they'd been in months. The media attention had given him something he'd been missing. Hope that his silence hadn't been for nothing. "We need to talk," Jake said simply. "Now." 20 minutes later, Jake, Caleb, Ethan, and Emma sat around the office computer, staring at a laptop screen showing a video call connection to San Francisco. On the other end, an 8-year-old girl with dark hair and serious eyes looked back at them, her parents visible in the background. "Hi," Sophia said quietly. "Is Rex there?" Caleb's voice was rough with emotion he'd kept buried for 2 years. "Sophia, sweetheart, how did you find us?" "I saw the video. Everyone's sharing it. Mom and Dad showed me, and I knew it was him. I knew it was the dog who saved my life." Emma leaned closer to the camera, immediately sensing a kindred spirit. "Rex is my friend now. He protects me too." Sophia smiled, the first genuine smile Caleb had seen from her since that night in the warehouse. "I'm glad. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to say I'm sorry for being scared. I know he was trying to help me." Jake positioned the laptop so Sophia could see Rex lying peacefully in the yard. At the sound of her voice, Rex's ears perked up. He approached the computer slowly, cautiously, his tail beginning a tentative wag as recognition dawned. "Hi, Rex," Sophia said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for saving me. I'm not scared anymore." Rex pressed his nose to the laptop screen, whining softly, not in distress, but in what could only be described as joy. Emma wrapped her arms around his neck, and suddenly he was surrounded by the two most important things in his world: the child he had saved and the child who had saved him. "He forgives you," Emma told Sophia seriously, "and I think you helped fix his broken heart." The conversation lasted an hour. Sophia told Rex about school, about her family's new puppy, about the nightmares that had finally stopped after seeing him happy and loved. Emma showed Sophia Rex's favorite toys, his sleeping spot under the oak tree, the way he sat perfectly when asked but only for people he trusted. Caleb filled in details about Rex's training, his decorations, his years of service before everything went wrong. Sophia's parents expressed their gratitude, not just for that night in the warehouse, but for giving their daughter the closure she needed to fully heal. When the call ended, Rex remained by the computer for several minutes, as if hoping Sophia might return. But something fundamental had shifted in his posture. The tension that had lived in his shoulders for 2 years was gone. The hypervigilance had softened into normal alertness. He was, quite simply, at peace. The media attention brought other changes to the ranch. Donations poured in from around the country, enough to upgrade facilities, hire additional staff, and establish a formal rehabilitation program for traumatized service animals. Rex became the program's first official success story and its most effective spokesperson. Dr. Chen revised her evaluation report, noting the animal's extraordinary protective instincts and demonstrated ability to form stable therapeutic bonds. The insurance company, facing a public relations nightmare if they euthanized America's newest canine hero, quietly extended coverage and established new protocols for evaluating traumatized service animals. The state of Texas issued a formal commendation. The Dallas Police Department, somewhat embarrassed by their earlier decision to discard Rex, offered him a position as a therapy dog for officers struggling with PTSD. Jake politely declined on Rex's behalf, pointing out that the dog had already found his true calling. 3 months after the storm, Emma started first grade at the local elementary school. Every morning, Rex walked her to the school bus stop, wearing his official therapy dog vest, not for disability assistance, but as a certified emotional support animal who helped other traumatized creatures learn to trust again. Every afternoon, he was waiting when she returned, his tail wagging the moment the bus appeared on the horizon. On weekends, families visited the ranch specifically to meet the famous hero dog. Rex tolerated the attention with patient dignity, allowing children to pet him and pose for pictures. But his favorite moments remained the quiet ones. Emma reading to him under the oak tree, teaching him new tricks, or simply sitting together watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in shades of gold and crimson. Ethan had been promoted to ranch manager, his salary reflecting both his hard work and the publicity his daughter had brought to the facility. More importantly, he'd learned something profound about second chances, about the power of seeing beyond surface appearances to the heart underneath. I used to think broken things should be thrown away, he told a reporter from People magazine during their cover story interview. My daughter taught me that sometimes broken things just need someone to believe they can be whole again. The interview would appear in the magazine's annual Heroes Among Us issue, with Rex and Emma on the cover under the headline, "The Beast Who Found Peace." But long before that, Rex had already received the only recognition that truly mattered, the unconditional love of a fearless child who had seen him not as he was, but as he could be. 2 years after Rex burst from his pen to save Emma's life, Lone Star Ranch hosted its second annual Second Chances celebration. The event had grown from a small local gathering to a regional phenomenon, drawing visitors from across the Southwest. Families who had adopted rescue animals, veterans seeking therapy dogs, and animal welfare advocates inspired by Rex's transformation. The day began with Emma, now 8 and sporting a confident smile despite her missing front tooth, giving a speech from the main platform. Rex sat beside her, wearing his therapy dog vest in the special collar the children of Dallas had sent him, bright blue with a silver star that caught the morning sunlight. Rex teaches us that being scared doesn't make you bad, Emma told the crowd, her slight lisp adding charm to her words. It just means you're hurt. And when someone loves you, even when you're hurt, you can get better. Rex helped me understand that people can be scared and brave at the same time. The audience applauded, but Rex only had eyes for the small girl beside him. In her presence, he had learned to be gentle again. Through her fearlessness, he had rediscovered his own courage. Because of her love, he had found his true purpose. After the ceremony, families toured the ranch's expanded facilities. The insurance settlement and subsequent donations had funded new training areas, comfortable living quarters for long-term rehabilitation cases, and a state-of-the-art veterinary clinic. Rex had become the facility's unofficial ambassador, greeting visitors with the calm dignity of someone who knew his worth. The most meaningful addition was barely visible, a simple bronze plaque mounted beside Rex's original pen, now converted into a memorial garden filled with native Texas wildflowers. It read, "In memory of Officer Miguel Rodriguez, Dallas PD, and all the handlers who gave their lives in service. Their partners remember. Their courage lives on. Their love never dies." Caleb had suggested the memorial, and Jake had approved it immediately. Rex visited the garden every morning before beginning his rounds, sitting quietly for a few minutes in what had become his personal ritual. It wasn't grief that drew him there anymore, but gratitude for Rodriguez, for the life they'd shared, and for the second chance that had come through the love of a fearless child. The ranch had become something unprecedented, a place where traumatized service animals weren't simply warehoused or euthanized, but actively rehabilitated using methods pioneered through Rex's recovery. The waiting list for admission had grown to 6 months, and inquiries came from police departments and military units across the country. As evening approached and the visitors departed, Emma found Rex in his favorite spot under the oak tree. She carried her school backpack full of homework and a thermos of hot chocolate that Jake's wife had prepared for their daily routine. "Math problems," she announced, settling beside Rex with the resignation of a student who would rather be playing. "Will you help me count?" Rex positioned himself so Emma could lean against his side, his warmth surrounding her like a living blanket. As she worked through multiplication tables, He kept watch over their domain, alert but relaxed, protective but peaceful. His amber eyes tracked every movement across the ranch, cataloging sounds and scents with the practiced efficiency of a professional guardian. The ranch settled into its evening rhythm, horses nickering in the distant pastures, cattle lowing as they moved toward shelter, the soft sounds of 100 animals finding comfort in familiar routines. Rex's ears followed each sound, finding nothing but the gentle symphony of a place where healing happened daily. 3 years ago, Rex had been a warrior without a war, a protector without a purpose, a hero branded as a villain by circumstances beyond his control. Trauma had convinced him he was a monster. Fear had made him dangerous. Isolation had nearly destroyed his soul. But Emma had seen something entirely different. She had recognized a gentle heart hiding behind defensive walls, a loyal spirit buried under layers of pain, a good dog who had temporarily lost his way. Her courage had called to his courage. Her love had awakened his love. Her absolute faith in his goodness had allowed him to believe in himself again. Now, as stars emerged in the vast Texas sky, and Emma dozed against his shoulder, her homework forgotten, Rex understood that redemption wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending the pain had never existed. Redemption was about choosing hope over fear, love over anger, purpose over despair. He was still the same dog who had charged into a warehouse to save Sophia Chen. He was still the warrior who had protected Emma from stampeding cattle. He was still the hero who risked everything for others without counting the cost. The only difference was that now, everyone could see it clearly. Emma stirred in her sleep, unconsciously tightening her grip on his fur. Rex adjusted his position slightly, ensuring she remained comfortable, then resumed his gentle vigil. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new animals to help, new opportunities to prove that broken souls could find their way home. But tonight, under a canopy of stars that stretched from horizon to horizon, a girl and her dog sat together in perfect contentment, living proof that sometimes the most powerful healing happens not through medicine or training or professional intervention, but through the simple act of believing in each other. The beast had found peace, the hero had come home, and love, as it always does when given the chance, had conquered all. In the distance, a coyote called to its pack, and Rex's ears twitched in automatic response. But he didn't move, didn't tense, didn't prepare for battle. Instead, he simply held his position, protecting what mattered most, a sleeping child who had seen past his scars to his heart, and in doing so, had saved them both. The story of Rex and Emma had become legend throughout Texas and beyond. But for them, it was simply life, ordinary, extraordinary, perfect in its simplicity. A man and his daughter had found a home. A broken dog had found his purpose. And somewhere in the space between human and animal, between past and future, between fear and faith, a miracle had taken root and grown into something beautiful. The beast was gone. Only the hero remained.